Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's lecture in public speaking class. And today our topic is going to be answering the essential question, what is a clincher? And it stands to reason that if a grabber comes at the beginning of a speech, you would be safe in guessing that a clincher is something you intentionally place at the end of a speech. So let's start at the beginning with the definition of a clincher. And in this case, the definition of a clincher is a parting idea that touches on what you want the audience to remember. A couple things you should consider when composing a clincher at the end of your speech. The first is that the last words you say are the words that stay with the audience. So if you want to leave something lingering in their mind, the clincher is what you want to be lingering in their mind. It connects to the broader speech theme. It may return to something that you mentioned in your grabber. It may return to a theme that was very prevalent in your speech, but in some way, shape, or form, it needs to connect to and basically put a cherry on top of your speech. And it also serves the purpose of a conclusion in an essay in that it does let the audience know definitively that your speech is finished. And as we talk about this, maybe you can reflect for a moment on whether or not you can think of a memorable clincher that you heard in a speech, and if so, what was it? And if you do remember it, that's a pretty good sign that that's a speech that was very effective because you remember it now. So, there are not as many clinchers as there are grabbers, so this is going to be a shorter lecture than the last one, but in much the same way, there are basic clinchers and there are advanced clinchers. So right now we're going to talk about some of the attributes of basic clinchers. And the first is similar to the grabber. A basic clincher is easy to think up. You don't have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what it's going to be. You just pretty much come up with it, and it's pretty much very obvious. So it doesn't mean that it's not effective. It is effective at letting your audience know that you are finished with the speech, but it's not entirely sophisticated. It is not something that's likely to leave a lasting impression. But from the perspective of having a coherent conclusion to your speech, whether you're being judged in a speech and debate event or whether you're being judged by your teacher in public speaking class, a clincher should make it very clear your speech is over. So, what are some basic examples of basic clinchers? The first is called residual message. Residual message. It is a brief, broad statement that sums up the main message of the speech, but does not just say what the topic was. It could rephrase the thesis in some way. So it should not be exactly the same as your grabber. If it is, that's pretty uncreative. But the effect of a residual message clincher is to remind the audience of what your main point is. So it's a way of reinforcing the main idea or the theme of your speech. And so, returning to our pizza topics, compliments of Mr. Larson, residual message example is nutritional topping choices can turn pizza into a healthy meal. There you go. So, another type of basic clincher is the call to action. A call to action tells the audience what you want them to do after hearing your speech. It could be something like asking them to vote, buy a product, write an email, consider a point of view, or something like that. It could also be some kind of challenge. A call to action is a very good way to end a speech where you are bringing your audience's attention to an issue that you feel doesn't get enough attention or an issue that you feel should be more prevalent in people's minds that is kind of getting kicked down the road, and you're basically trying to kind of shake people into a higher level of consciousness about your issue. So you are directing the audience. And a call to action is very likely to be something you would do at the end of a speech that has political implications. So an example of a call to action is, break away from unhealthy combinations and choose nutritious toppings the next time you order pizza. Notice how I delivered that too. You focus on the tools of delivery. I did that on purpose. All right. There are so many basic clinchers and there are so many advanced clinchers. Actually, there's 2 of each. So instead of 9 this time, we've got 4. Shorter set of notes, less to remember, still important. Advanced clinchers obviously are a little bit harder to think up. You have to be more creative, and they do have more of a risk-reward calculation, very much the same as your more complex grabbers. They do require effective delivery. If you are not confident in the way you deliver a speech, you may want to rein yourself in attempting an advanced clincher. You have to have effective delivery to help signal to the audience that you are finished with the speech. And it needs to be sophisticated. It needs to be something that is likely to leave a lasting impression. So if you are being judged in a competitive speech and debate event, an advanced clincher is something you want to be very intentional about so that you leave a certain impression upon the judge. So the first type of advanced clincher is called full circle. So this is where the grabber and the clincher work together to basically form the top and the bottom bun of your speech, and the meat and the lettuce and the tomato and the onions and all the garnishments and condiments. Those are the details of your speech. So it connects back to the grabber and adds to it, or reuses a part of the grabber. This is something that's very common in a TED Talk. And this is especially good when you've used an anecdote in your speech. So the effect of a full circle clincher is to complete the speech. So for example, if you left something out in your grabber and had some suspended interest, your full circle clincher is going to come in and fill in that missing piece of information. That question you left your audience with at the beginning is going to be answered at the end, and so it comes full circle. And you don't need to say, let's circle back. An example of a full circle clincher is, unlike the teeth on top pizza order that I made on my 6th birthday, I stick with nutritional toppings when I order pizza today. I've grown as a human, and so now I order pizza in a more mature way. I made up that last part. And the final type of advanced clincher is also called the final thought. And the final thought is something that gets the audience to think beyond the content of the speech. So if your speech is on a specific topic, you use the final thought to get the audience to expand their ideas beyond just your topic and some kind of larger implication. So it could be a vision of the future. It could be some form of advice. It could be a rhetorical question in which you leave the audience pregnant with curiosity about possible directions that the topic of your speech could take them. So the idea of a final thought at the end of your speech, to clinch it, is to transcend the speech itself and to get the audience to embrace broader context and perhaps their role or their perspective in bringing about that broader context. A final thought goes beyond. And so our final thought pizza example, compliments of Mr. Larson, is, what if the toppings we choose symbolize our innermost secrets? What you place on top of your pizza will tell the world who you are and what you desire. Who knew a pizza could be so significant in identifying who you are? I made up that last part, but you get the idea. You get the idea. So you may find it somewhat delightful that this was a shorter lecture, but it's still important to summarize it. It'll just be a shorter summary today. I want you to write a 5 to 6 sentence summary. You want to list the 2 categories of clinchers. I need to take that 3 out of there and change it to 2 when I present this in class. I want you to differentiate between them, what makes them different from each other, and how do different clinchers affect an audience differently, and how can understanding clinchers make you a better public speaker. If you can do that in your summary, then your summary is worth something, not just to me, more importantly, to you. And with that, this is Mr. Blumendahl signing off on today's lesson on clinchers, and this is our final lesson in the unit on delivery. It's about time to start delivering some speeches, kids.